December 7th, 1941. This was the last day in history before the world map was about to change forever. A catastrophe was about to strike the U.S. Navy base, one that no one had anticipated. On board a battleship, an African-American cook named Doris Miller begins his usual routine. As the morning sun rises, he serves breakfast to a Navy officer and then gets to work washing their clothes. At 7:57 a.m., Doris Miller hears a strange siren, one that no sailor ever wants to hear in their service. He rushes outside and is left in shock. The entire sky is filled with Japanese bombers. In the blink of an eye, the U.S. Navy base is turned into a scene of destruction as Japanese aircraft systematically target and destroy American battleships and facilities. This was the infamous attack on Pearl Harbor. But the question remains, why did Japan dare to launch such a massive attack on a superpower like the United States? Why was a cook named Doris Miller awarded the highest honor in America? And why did the United States launch a nuclear attack on Japan? Welcome once again to another interesting video. This story takes us back to 1941, when America risked everything to save China during World War II. Yes, the same China that America openly speaks against today. At this point, 3 years had passed since the start of World War II. On one side were Germany and Italy, while on the other were Britain, the Netherlands, and France. America had no involvement in this war. It remained completely neutral, as the losses from World War I had made the US determined to stay out of any conflict happening in Europe and Asia. But there was one country that kept provoking America, and that was Japan. Due to a lack of natural resources, Japan was forcefully occupying neighboring countries to meet its growing demands. Japan had already taken control of large parts of Korea, Taiwan, and China. In the Pacific Ocean, its eyes were set on the Philippines, Malaysia, and Indonesia. However, there was a problem. Malaysia was a British colony, Indonesia belonged to the Netherlands, and the Philippines was a colony of neutral America. These countries strongly opposed Japan's expansion, as they knew that Hitler was secretly supporting Japan. And Hitler was the sworn enemy of Britain and America. Seeing Japan's actions, America stopped supplying oil to Japan in July 1941. Japan had no oil reserves of its own and depended on the US for 80 to 90% of its oil imports. In response, America put forth a condition: Japan must withdraw from China if it wanted to resume its oil supply. This put Japan in a very difficult position. On one hand, if Japan withdrew from China, the world would see it as a humiliating defeat, proving that even with Hitler's support, Japan had surrendered to America. On the other hand, without oil, Japan's military and expansion plans would weaken significantly. Japan decided not to withdraw its troops from China. Instead, it secretly planned to invade Indonesia for oil. But this wasn't an easy task, as we already know. Indonesia was a colony of the Netherlands at that time. To reach Indonesia, Japan first needed to take control of the Philippines, which was an American colony. Japan also knew very well that if it attacked the Philippines, America would retaliate immediately, and the counterattack would come from the US Navy base at Pearl Harbor in the Pacific Ocean. But Japan's oil reserves were running out rapidly, and it had no other option left except to attack Pearl Harbor. The Japanese military leaders decided to launch a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, aiming to completely destroy the US Navy base. This would allow Japan to easily take control of the Philippines without facing resistance. Japan secretly began preparing for the attack by assembling a massive fleet, which included battleships, 39 submarines, destroyers, 114 bomber aircraft. These aircraft were deployed on 6 aircraft carriers, which set sail toward Pearl Harbor. On the other side, the American forces stationed at Pearl Harbor had battleships, 9 anti-aircraft ships, submarines, to 90 aircraft. Looking at these numbers, America had enough military strength to counter the attack, but only if they had been warned in advance. Japan, however, wanted to keep the attack completely secret. To ensure this, the Japanese commander ordered strict radio silence, preventing any wireless communication before the attack. After traveling nearly 8,000 kilometers, the Japanese attack fleet was now just 370 kilometers away from Pearl Harbor, and this was the moment when the Japanese aircraft took off for the attack. This was about to become the largest attack of World War II. And at this point, America was still not officially part of the war. December 7th, 1941, 7:57 a.m. a total of 350 Japanese aircraft launched a devastating attack on Pearl Harbor, splitting into 2 separate groups. Since the Americans were completely unaware of this attack, it felt as if doomsday had arrived. The such first wave of Japanese bombers unleashed a rain of destruction, relentlessly attacking for 45 minutes before retreating. At first, the Americans thought the attack was over, but just 10 minutes later, a second wave of bombers arrived and wiped out what was left of the naval base. For a full 1 hour and 15 minutes, the bombing continued. Japan had completely overpowered the Americans. By the end of the attack, American vessels were destroyed, battleships were sunk, over 300 American planes were wiped out. The ground was engulfed in flames, and the sky was filled with thick black smoke. During this attack, an African-American cook named Doris Miller was also aboard one of America's battleships. The same Doris Miller we mentioned at the beginning of the video, the man who would later receive America's highest military honor. While collecting laundry for a Navy officer, Doris heard a terrifying siren. By the time he rushed outside, a Japanese torpedo had already struck their ship, leaving many officers, including the captain, severely injured. Doris single-handedly carried wounded officers to safety and then took control of an anti-aircraft machine gun, fighting back against the Japanese aircraft. Despite having no prior experience, he managed to shoot down 6 Japanese planes. This was remarkable, considering that Japan lost only 29 aircraft in the entire attack. Doris Miller became the first African-American to receive the prestigious Navy Cross Award, which is the highest honor in the U.S. Navy and the second highest military decoration in the United States after the Medal of Honor. After 1 hour and 15 minutes of relentless bombing, the Japanese aircraft finally retreated. But by then, they had already dragged America into World War II. Until this attack, America had remained neutral, but now it was ready to strike back. The very next day, America declared full-scale war against Japan. For the next 3 months, America focused on restoring its Navy base. Several ships that had sunk in shallow waters were salvageable and were repaired for combat. After 4 months, America launched a devastating counterattack on Japan, just as Japan had done to Pearl Harbor. In April 1942, America launched its first attack on Japan, raining bombs over Tokyo, the capital of Japan. This was America's first major offensive in World War II, but it didn't stop there. Instead, the war continued for another 4 years. During this time, America dominated the battle, and Japan became significantly weaker, but it still refused to surrender. Finally, in August 1945, America made its final move to end the war. August 6, 1945, 8CMA Boeing B-29 Superfortress aircraft was spotted over the city of Hiroshima, Japan. Moments later, it dropped a 4,400 kilograms atomic bomb named Little Boy over the city. Exactly 43 seconds later, a massive explosion occurred, illuminating the entire city with an intense flash of light. A gigantic fireball erupted from the ground, shooting into the sky, while the temperature on the ground soared to 5,000 degrees Celsius. This was the first nuclear attack in human history, and within seconds, the entire city was reduced to rubble. Japan's military leaders were in complete shock, as if the ground had been pulled from under their feet, before they could even process what had happened. Just 3 days later, on August 9, 1945, America dropped another atomic bomb, this time on the city of Nagasaki. This bomb, named Fat Man, weighed 4,670 kilos, and, upon impact, it completely incinerated the city. These two nuclear bombs were the first and only nuclear weapons ever used in warfare. The damage was beyond comprehension. Millions of people lost their lives, and Japan suffered losses worth billions of dollars. Just 1 week after these attacks, Japan surrendered to America, marking the official end of World War II.